Welcome everyone. I'm Tan from the organizing team of ITviec, and it's my great pleasure to have you guys joining with us today in our webinar named Power of Productivity and Engagement of IT Teams in Multicultural Working Environment. This webinar is also the last episode of the 3 webinar series in May by ITviec, focusing on 2 big keywords: productivity and engagement in IT teams. So we are super excited to have you here with us, and it's no raining today in Ho Chi Minh City, hopefully in everywhere in the world who joining us today. And we will be ready to dive into how diverse cultural backgrounds can supercharge an IT team's productivity and spark engagement. And then wait no more, first up, I would love to introduce our fantastic speakers and hosts. We've had Mr. An Lê, the CEO of NFQ, Mr. Minh Lê, the Managing Director of TymeX, and Mr. Rakesh, the Managing Director of Ipsos Vietnam. Please give our esteemed speakers and hosts a great applause and interactions for the welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minh Lê, Mr. An Lê, and Mr. Rakesh. And I would love to extend the welcome a bit to share about the profile of our speakers and host. So Mr. An Lê has over 16 years of experience doing business locally and internationally in a number of industries, including technology, retailing, BPO, e-commerce, and exporting. So within 7 years of joining NFQ, one of the biggest tech firms in Europe, he oversaw the expansions of the NFQ Asia from 40 to 300 employees, and in 3 nations, 2 continents, and 7 offices. So Mr. An Lê got many killer strategy and stories that you don't want to miss. It's our privilege to have you here with us, Mr. An Lê. Thank you. And then welcome you. And then Mr. Minh Lê is team managing director at TymeX in Vietnam, a member of Time Group. Mr. Minh Lê has more than 10 years of experience in senior management roles at large technology and fintech corporations in many countries. He has lived and worked in the United States, Japan, South Africa, Philippines, and Vietnam. And now he's still traveling across the world. With his experience increasing output in the variety of diverse teams, we believe that Mr. Minh will provide us with doable strategy for creating a welcoming and productive workplace. So we have our honor to have you here with us today, Mr. Minh Lê. Thank you. And monitoring our discussion panel today is Mr. Rakesh Dayal, Managing Director of Ipsos Vietnam. Mr. Rakesh has over 20 years of expertise in market research and strategic consulting. He's been working and managing in different regions such as India, Middle East, Indonesia, and been in Vietnam for more than 8 years. He has passion for multicultural team dynamics, and his profound understanding of the market strategies will enrich our discussions and guide our today's webinar. Thank you, Mr. Rakesh. Being able to have you here is our great pleasure. And now we are all set to explore the tough challenges, but also the rewarding strategies for building successful, diverse IT teams. Wait no more. I believe that you all have your questions, and keep your minds open. We can start it. And then, of course, I would like to extend the invitation to our host, Mr. Rakesh, to officially open the conversations today, which our session will be incredibly fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tan, and thanks for ITviec for inviting us. And I'm really excited because we have a great panelist today. I've had a separate discussion before this call, and I'm really excited with the profile of speakers today. So I'm really honored to host this event. Thank you so much. Now, just if you just take a look back and look at where as IT industry Vietnam is, right? If you look at Vietnam and IT sector, it is becoming a hub, a global hub where most of the IT entrepreneurs are setting up their base in Vietnam. And there is a lot of startups in Vietnam servicing clients across the globe. So that's and the best thing what this all brings is the growth. So we are seeing a growth year on year of almost like 10% of IT as an industry. So this is a great time for all IT professionals and mostly all our audience today. I am assuming that most of you are from IT sector. So I'm really excited for this whole session today. So as we start the session, we will focus on like first 1 hour of our discussion on really getting some piece of advice from our esteemed panelists, Mr. An and Mr. Minh. Both of them, as Ms. Than mentioned, have a rich experience in the IT sector and especially in managing the different cultures. So I'm really excited on that. So we will focus on the first 1 hour on just discussion, and we'll keep the last 30 minutes, maybe from 8 to 8:30, on answering questions which you might have. So please keep your questions ready and keep sending it, as the team from ITviec will keep collating it, and then at the end we will start answering questions as much as possible. So great. So let's talk about multicultural. What does it mean? And how is it really linked to building up engagement or productivity? So if you look at the advantages of multicultural, just to understand what is multicultural, like in a simple layman term, it is you have people working with different cultural background in a very simple language. So how do we work with people in the team, not just Vietnamese, because we know as a culture about Vietnam, we know the differences between, say, Hanoi and Saigon, right? Or Central, like Highlands. But then when we have team, which is now in with us, maybe face to face or in hybrid situation where or online, virtual, where somebody from our team is sitting somewhere in South Africa or in Philippines or in any country in Europe. So it's about understanding this culture, which is different culture. And so that is what we call it as multicultural. And with this multicultural environment, how do we ensure that we continue with the engagement, a good engagement? Same like if we were working in one culture. So how we manage that? And how does it actually link to the productivity of the entire team and hence the company? So that is what we will focus today. What I understand is if you look at the advantages of multicultural team, number one is really looking at from different angles, right? You look at the ideas, you have ideas which is coming from different culture, like different upbringing, different completely different environment, right? So that is where you get good ideas. You also get to understand, like, for example, I'm based in Vietnam, but we are servicing a client which is based in, say, South Africa. Now, if we have someone from South Africa in our team, we know actually how to interact with the customers there or the clients there, right? So that is, again, understanding the market. If we have a better culture, if we have a team with different culture, different, when I say culture, it is not just the nationality, but how they behave. It's not just about English, right? Speaking English is just one part. You might think that, okay, if I am not speaking English, maybe if I would have a better English, or if I was a native English speaker, then I would have managed any country. It's not the fact. People from UK and US, where both are native English speakers, but the culture is different. The way they interact is different. So that is what is the topic today. And what we understand, it certainly is something which we will explore. And now let me just start by asking few questions to our esteemed panel. Mr. Anle, if we just talk about the team, your team of NFQ, how is your team structured when we talk about a multicultural team?
So thanks a lot for the question. I'm sorry, but I think I need to spend a little bit time to explain what we do first, because then you understand why we have a structure of what we do. So in NFQ, what we do is we scale, help the business to scale. And what it means is most of the time we have startups from Germany or from all over the world to scale either their operation or when they want to expand into a new market. And in order to do that, we believe in the diversity of the team, because let's say if you want to go to Asia and you want to sell your solution to Asia and you have no Asian in your team, it doesn't make any sense. Or if you are developing a payment feature for Vietnam and you have no Vietnamese engineers in the team or product owner in the team, again, it doesn't make any sense. So that's why by nature, our team is really diversified. For example, in Vietnam, I think we have a team of 250 people, up to 300 people, give or take. And we have more than 12 nationalities. So a very typical team that we have is we have engineers from Poland or Lithuania working very closely with another engineers from Egypt or another engineer from Vietnam. And all together, they are managed by two Scrum Master from all over the world, and a project manager somewhere close to the client. So that is the setting that we are having in the company.
And just for the and my apologies, I did not ask you to talk about the company, but since we are talking about your company, Mr. An, what is the core service which you provide to the customers or your clients?
So it's 20 years ago when the company first started. The business model is very simple. You have startup in Germany that need engineers, and then you have engineers from not in Germany, and then they try to provide engineers into the team. So we started the business in Lithuania. At the time, it was a very decent country with very reasonable engineers. And then eventually, 20 years later, and now we are talking about Vietnam, we talk about Thailand, we talk about Egypt. But at the same time, in the last 4 years, we are moving forward to a new kind of services. So we do consulting for big corporate. We do the central data platform for them. And then we have to provide big company with the solution from startup work. So we are like the interim, and we do system integration. So it's kind of, we do everything when it comes to technology.
Excellent. So it's like a one-stop shop, is it, when it comes to the requirement of IT?
Yes, exactly. One-stop shop.
Thank you. That's good. And Mr. Minh, would you like to just share a bit about about Time and also about the structure of your team?
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Minh. I am the GM of TymeX Vietnam. So a little bit about how we are structured, right? So we are a part of a digital banking group called Time Group, based in Singapore. We launched a digital bank, TymeX, in South Africa about 5 years ago, purely on a digital model. And so we're at about 9 million customers there. About a year and a half ago, we launched our second deployment in the Philippines, our second digital bank in the Philippines. And we've grown to now about 3 million customers there. Vietnam is what we would call the technology hub. It's where, in terms of what we do is basically we build the banking platforms that services the banks, right? So we say that we build and we run the banking platforms. Currently, we have about 350 engineers or so that's servicing both countries. And so I think, we're quite diverse. So, primarily, we leverage Vietnamese talent, right? So a lot of very young, talented Vietnamese engineers here. But in addition, we also have people from England, South Africa, Ukraine, the Philippines, Indonesia. So it's a bit of a unique, diverse working culture. And then we try to, even though most of them come from abroad, we try to bring them in Vietnam so they can, again, work closely and build that relationship and have a better understanding of each other. And again, because we're also, we're in multi-country environments and the common language is English, it's imperative that, we have people from different perspectives, different cultures and viewpoints to actually reel everything in, right? Because ultimately an organization, you want to speak, you want to be on the same wavelength, right? In terms of a common language, a common way of work. And then ultimately you want to try to achieve the same goals, right? So I think everything at the same point where, the multi-country is important because it brings diversity. It actually, at the end of the day, ties you back into trying to achieve your organizational goals, right?
Right. And just to continue on that, Mr. Minh, how is the reporting line? Is it like people based in, say, Vietnam are reporting to somewhere, somebody's based in South Africa or in Philippines? Or do you have a team which is based here, but again, a reporting line to a manager who is not Vietnamese? And how does that work?
No, so I mean, like the way that we structure, because we're the technology enablement team, right? So everything that, from banking services to cloud ops and everything else falls underneath our, our purview. Okay. So from a direct reporting line, everything is under TymeX. And, so we have everybody in Vietnam and also there are other members who are outside of Vietnam as part of this technology group, right? But the way that we interact and we communicate with the banks is there's actually no direct reporting line there. It's more of a collaboration because we're the engineering and product enablement piece, and they're the business piece. So, we match our product and technology with what fits their needs in their market, right? So there's no direct reporting line from that standpoint, but there is a big collaboration, basically relationship between the banks and us.
And how about you, Mr. An?
So each of the when we have a client work with us, usually then the team report directly to the client. So from their side, they will have a product owner. Sometimes it can be a product manager or even the chief product officer. If we are talking about several teams reporting to them. And then at the same time, so you also have a CTO, so the engineering lead in the team, they will report, dotted line to the CTO as well. But eventually, I really like what Mr. Minh just shared. It's very important that for the team, you have an aligned goal, right? And then you have one person in charge for that team. And usually the model we have is we have one person in charge from our side, which we call the head of business unit. And then from the client side, they also need to give us one person in charge. And that person needs to make sure that the team is working well. And if they are not working well, then, they need to be an escalation discussion among the two peers from the two organizations.
Interesting. And we will just park that part of, if something is not working, I'll come back to that. But before that, Mr. Han, can I just ask, like, if I have to just ask you, what are the advantages of having a multicultural team based on your experience?
Honestly, when you have, I used to work in a different industry where I need to rely on so little people. Like I have a team of 10 people and that's perfect, right? And then I joined tech industry, and when you have a team that which is very complicated and you have a lot of people involved, so in terms of collaboration and like the interaction among the people, I would say technology tech company is actually very complicated, because when it comes to technologies, usually people think, okay, AI, automation, but eventually right now you still need people to talk to each other, clarify the feature, build up the accepted criteria, so on and so on. So many interactions. So in that sense, honestly, I don't see any advantage of having so many people from different backgrounds, honestly. If there is one, I would say that if you are a fast-moving startup and you need to have many ideas and your team are comfortable to disagree with each other in a respectful way, then that is the advantage of having a multicultural team. Because when you have, people with different backgrounds and contexts, they will see the same thing in a different perspective. And then if all together your team agree and again agree and look forward to the same aligned goals, then you will have a really perfect way to go to the success.
Excellent. So what I get from here is you're talking about if there is something which is like an advantage, then it is about getting a different context while we are, especially for the startups, where we really want to have something interesting, some new ideas for product development or so. Yeah. Your perspective, Mr. Minh?
Yeah, I mean, I think the end of the day, right? Like I did stress on the point of, is it reinforcing bringing everyone together to basically be on the same page and, strive towards a common goal, right? And what I see, and it's partly a reflection of myself and then some of the other folks who come in and help out, is basically it's filling in the gaps, right? Where there may not be a clear understanding, in terms of communication, right? In terms of cultural taboos. If you're working with a South African, how different is that than working with a Filipino, right? I mean, obviously, even though both of them speak English, the way that they speak, the way that they interact is different. So I think little things that at the end of the day add up. We already touched on the idea of a lot of idea sharing and contribution. But like I said, it's the little things that actually bring in the organization closer and tighter together, and then be on the same page, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it helps. Like if you have people who understand differences in culture, they're much more tolerant. Yeah, and it's a lot of it is, there's a lot of times I see that, when there's misunderstanding, it's not that somebody's trying to be purposely disrespectful, right? It's just more that there's just a misunderstanding in terms of cultural differences. And so there's people who take it the wrong way. But in reality, when you have people from different backgrounds who've experienced these things, they're more tolerant, they're more open to these type of interactions.
Yeah, I want to add a very important thing. I think so I was born in Saigon, so I'm from here, and I have been in the country for 30 plus years, something. So I mean I'm a Saigoneer, but I see the city changing so much in the last 10 years. Just the last month I was in a birthday party in Thao Dien, District 2. right? And I was in the party, and then I see so many Vietnamese people, but none of them speaking Vietnamese to me because like they just came back from US to UK, and some of them is actually the first time they're back to Vietnam. So I think to be honest, we're living in a super flat country, super flat work right now. And it's the same thing I observe even in China. I was in China, I was in Japan, and people are getting more and more inclusive. So this is the new work we are living in, and I think that you like it or not, the multicultural environment is gonna be the new normal working environment for you. So yeah, I mean, advantage or not advantage, the question is more like how we can cope with it and how we can make it working for your team and your company.
Exactly. And what do you see as like as a barrier when it comes to working in a multicultural organization?
I think definitely the number one thing is gonna be English. And if you want to work in Japan, it's gonna be Japanese. If you work in Korea, it's gonna be Korean. So and I think language is also about the culture, right? So I was in Japan. It's very interesting. I was in Japan with my friend, and then he tell me, okay, you're not allowed to shake people's hand like this in Europe, right? I was work a lot with people from Europe. It's just like hello, and then it's wrong, right? You have to bow and do a lot of stuff. And I think language is the first door, but then you need to also understand. And what is very important is you need to understand what is not allowed in the other culture. It's more about when it comes to do and don't, it's more about the don't. That if you do that, people will think that you are disrespectful to their culture or themselves. And I think it's yeah. So if I can choose only one thing, I think it's gonna be language.
Got it, Mr. Minh.
So it's funny that you raised Japan because I actually, previous to Vietnam, I was in Japan for 10 plus years, and I worked there for a bit. That was, I came back to Vietnam, from working with a Japanese company, and so and also my wife's Japanese. So it's funny that you raised that point. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, like there's companies, and especially when you made a comment, and I think there was also a comment in the chat of the type of companies that you work for, right? So if you're working for a Japanese company, or you're working for a German company, or you're working for a Korean company, usually those tend to be stronger, and they want to highlight, emphasize that culture as part of their strength. And it's not necessarily towards focusing on diversity as much as being one and aligned with their culture that is more important. So I'll touch on Japan because that's where I spent a lot of time, right? So a lot of it is, do you understand Japanese culture, and do you understand the detailedness of a Japanese individual, especially with respect to quality, right? And how detailed they are and how deep they go. And because you understand that aspect of their culture, then you can work much better alongside of them. So it's almost a little bit like when you're in that when you're working for those type of companies, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, right? A part of it is understanding, and a part of it is what I would call like a little bit of indoctrination, right? You have to understand, you have to almost be a part of them before you perform. So whereas I'm using this one more of the context of bridging gaps, and gaps, whether it be communication gaps or, like you mentioned, don't shake hands with somebody, right? In Japan, that's a taboo, right? So just basically clarifying the don'ts, and making sure that, what you're doing is like I said, in terms of being open, being respectful. I think those things are again one in the same in different ways, but it's just different aspects of how companies work and how countries within Vietnam operate. Companies that or companies that are representing different countries in Vietnam operate.
Yep, thanks. Just because we are talking about Japan and I had this very interesting incidents, let me just share the story. So one of our client, a Japanese client, and we were just presenting, and after the presentation, I asked if there is any question or any feedback. Everybody is quiet in the room. And then I asked the main person whom we normally interact, and this person says, and then he stands and he Japanese, and he looks at and he says, "Hey, do you guys have any question?" And I said, "Yes, of course I have questions." So I was like, after the session, I asked, "What is the difference?" I asked the same question. Do you have any questions? And then when you ask the same question, they are saying, yes, they have questions. So of course we answered, but then I was informed that you have to actually look at people and say, "Ma'am, do you have any question? I think I see that you have some questions." So it's not just saying people will not raise their hand and say, "I have a question." Right. So yes, it's what I understand from both of you. It is all about communication becomes a big barrier, especially when we are not familiar. It's not just, I mean, I would say, of course, language is the basic, but not just language, but we should also be aware of the norms of each culture, each country, to make us be more easy to interact and understand different people. And now that brings to the next question. Do you have any specific policies around people, especially when you're working from Vietnam, but recruiting people, say, of other nationalities, either working from that country offshore or an expat or a foreigner working in Vietnam? So do you have any public, like a people policy which ensures that you have a training, onboarding? I'm just wanted to hear from you, Mr. Minh.
So yeah, so I'll touch up on that in a bit, but I mean, I'll know right now, but basically, for anybody joining our company, right? Usually there's a 2-month probation period, right? And what we do is we have a series of different types of onboarding training, right? But one is what we built ourselves, and we have a learning management system that helps support it. But it's called the Time Academy, right? So Time is in our company, the Academy. So it's basically about a month's worth of training, where it's not only just technical, but you get to understand what our history is, who leadership is, and not only just in Vietnam, but outside of Vietnam. How our goals and how we're trying to achieve our goals work in terms of OKRs, roadmap, so on and so forth, right? So that's what we're doing now. And then what we're doing in the next couple months is actually we're pretty heavy. We're heavily invested in AWS. So we're a cloud digital bank, and we're AWS first digital bank. And so we had a survey of basically of the last cohort of people who've been in our company for under a year. And our question to them was very simple, and it was actually very eye-opening, was, in your first year, did you feel that you had the skill sets that you need in AWS, right, in particular, to be able to do your work effectively? And it was on a scale of 1 to 10, right? And the score was like on average of 5. So that was a little bit shocking to me, right? And so now we're actually working very closely with AWS to launch a very like they're going to customize a program for us. And so the goal from there is, from day one, right, until at least their first month or 2 months of probation, you're basically going to get full AWS training. And then for our portfolio, so, you know, we break our teams up into portfolios and areas. So for example, lending would be a portfolio. They would then go deep into their tech stack using AWS. So it's something that, you know, we strive to achieve, and we're a feedback oriented culture, right? So obviously one is coming in and building that training and understanding of our culture from day one, but then also additionally technical training afterwards. So I think we're very excited to launch that program. So yes, I mean, I guess a long way to add to your question is, like, we do have a lot of training as part of, you know, people coming into our company.
Thank you. And let's just shift the gear and look at how do we resolve the conflicts, Mr. An, if there is any conflict, especially when the conflict comes when, you know, there are different nationalities or different cultures involved. How do you intervene and resolve those?
Before answering that, I want to explain one thing first. When you talk about multicultural, we are making a stereotype of, you know, a guy from Asia different from the guy from, I don't know, Germany. Most of the time it's true, right? But at the same time, if you have a guy who was in Germany but spent 6 years or 7 years studying in US, that's a different kind of guy, right? At the same time, the age of the people also determine a lot of the trait that how they interpret things, or how they interact with other people, and how they deal with conflicts. So in our company, we have the company values, so it's applied for 800 people all over the world, wherever the offices you are in. And then we have the values of the country where you decided to base out of. And then within the country, you have offices, because we have all 4 offices in Vietnam. So each office will have a different kind of flavor as well. And then inside the team, they also have their own core values. So in the beginning of any project or the team kickoff, most of the team, they will do the team canvas, and the team canvas is a way for them to clarify the do's and don'ts and the goals and the common objective of the team, and how they resolve conflicts if they have any conflicts. But most of the time, it's all comes down to leadership. In our company, the leader or the manager of the team is the one that needs to resolve the conflicts based on the preference of the team, and also based on the level of the seriousness of the conflict. If you are talking about like just Vietnamese people aging from 25 up to 40, the best way for them to solve a conflict is ask them out for drinking and then karaoke, and then they will be very happy, and tomorrow everything's solved. If you're talking about German colleges, the best way for them is to sit in the office and then say very directly, like, I don't like this and that. And most of the time they will be like, okay, got it. Because they are super not sensitive at all sometimes, right? We don't have very clear guidelines of how to solve the conflict, but we rely on our managers and the team because we hope that our values is strong enough that they believe when they come to this company, everyone got each other back, and we're not here to play any political stupid games.
Yeah, thank you. I think you touched upon a very interesting point, which was about the communication. Like sometimes, depending on the culture, and I completely agree and understand about the stereotyping which we do, which we should not do, because if we see someone from a particular country or a nationality, we label them, oh, this is how they will behave. But actually, as you said, their upbringing might be different. They might be coming completely from a different, they might already have an experience of working abroad. With a different culture. So I think that's one, I would say, a takeout from this session is that don't stereotype someone, because that will again keep, it will be a barrier for us and that person, me and that person during the interaction. And you also touched upon one interesting point, which was about the, communication style. So, like some of the Western, as you said, German, for example, they're dead direct, right? If I have to give a feedback, it could be direct, and then the person says, I got it, and that's it. But you can't really use the same technique and the language or the way of communication with people, especially in Asia, right? It has to be indirect. And as you said, you take them out for drink, but still share the feedback, they're fine, and that's okay. So these are, I would say, nuances which are required and to be aware of when it comes to multicultural. Now moving on to the topic of like stress, and the reason why we wanted to bring this topic is there is a report from the from Gallup, yeah, and it's a very interesting one of the point which we read is in US, when there is a lot of stress, the productivity increases. Surprising. Whereas if you look at countries like Europe and Asia, it goes completely opposite. If I work under stress, I won't perform. My productivity really goes down. But it is just opposite. And as per that report of Gallup 2023, it says that they look for such environment where they can perform much more effectively and much more better. What's your view, Mr. Minh? You come from US.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, where I think at least the culture, the working culture in the US, there's a lot of pressure, right, in terms of performance, in terms of measuring performance, and to some degree that resonates with a lot of people, but I think here in Vietnam, it's, and especially in technology, I don't think that's the way to motivate somebody, right? To say, hey, you've got to hit your numbers here, especially in teams, right? Or you've got to deliver this at this date, which usually that's a scary word for everyone, right? So the way that I try to think through things and at least put the team in perspective, it's really the team. It's not, you're just not on an island by yourself. And what you do, you win together, you lose together, right? And you do things together, but there's a supporting cast around you to help enable to achieve your goals. And I think at the end of the day, if you're able to do it, then you're doing it with others, and then you can celebrate together. And then if you're not able to accomplish it, then you've got a support net there that can help you. So I think that's how I look at it. And I think it just, that mentality really just, to be honest, really resonates more in the US than any other place I've seen. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So that was actually a shocking point which I read, and I thought I'll bring it up and especially ask you because you come from US. Mr. N, the next point is all about when I or somebody who works in a company, it's always looking for a psychological safety, right? Yes, I will perform my best, everything all taken care, but ultimately it is all about how do I feel when I go to office? Do I feel like valued, like fairly? That's the point which links to our multicultural. So irrespective of what culture, which nationality I am, or when I enter the office of NFQ, I feel like at home, irrespective of whatever differences we have. So how do you ensure that psychological safety especially when I assume you have around 10% of your staff who's say expats working in Vietnam, or sometimes you also have staff working in Egypt, for example. How do you engage with them and ensure that psychological safety is taken care of?
Yeah, so the number one thing is I want every employees when coming to NFQ feel like they are in university or college, right? College, high school, I'm sorry. Rather than feeling like home, because I want them to go home, the real home with the parents, with the wife and husband and the kids. Life is too short to spend to be workaholic. That's my personal belief. It's number one. So in NFQ, we really care about the people feeling, because eventually as a tech company, we don't owe any solution yet. So what we do here is we provide the best talent to the company that need the best talent. So that's what we do. So people is our most important concern. So every week we send our post survey. So it's very short. It's only like 5 questions. How are you this week? Is your manager taking care of you? Are you happy with your team? And are you happy in NFQ in general? And then some other, funny questions about, I think the last question we asked is, how many days you think is the best for you to come to the office? Something like that, right? So, and I, as the CEO of the company, I read all of the comments every week to make sure that they feel listened, and that there is no hiccup or escalation in the company that I am not aware of. And it doesn't mean that I need to intervene, because if I intervene, I have no time for other things. But I need the people to understand that if they have a concern, someone will be there and listen to it. So I think from my own experiences in this company, when you do something different, when you grow, you will feel stressful, right? Because learning means that you have a very high chance of failing. So if you make a mistake, then you start learning, and then next time, hopefully you will not make the same mistake, but then you will make another new mistake, because then that's how you learn again the new thing. So to be honest, I think stress is inevitable, especially in such a VUCA environment like tech that we are operating in. But transparency is how you can make the people feel safe. Transparency means that if we do a policy, if we ask the people to come to the office, we need to explain to people why we decide to do that. Or like if I'm not gonna organize a company trip, I need to explain what I plan to use the money for. For example, go into Japan or Korea to attend a boot conference, for example. So when you explain to people and you give them more information, it makes them feel onboarded, it makes them feel trusted, listened, and then that's how you give them the safety net in terms of psychology.
Very interesting. Okay. So quite a lot of interesting points. Thanks, Mr. An and Mr. Minh. Let's move on and really look at what are the areas, especially and not specifically for your organization, but IT as an industry overall. What do you think we should be really training or improving in terms of communication? Because I remember during my individual chats, I think it was Mr. Minh who said that, in some of the meetings, if there are some of the expats, our team in Vietnam would not even raise their hand to ask a question. So is it just about English, or is it about a confidence of communicating their point of view? Because IT is like, people are mostly engineers with the geeks who really are more focused on the work, right? And they are delivering good results. But then when it comes to working with different teams, what are the areas when it especially comes to communication? What should be our focus as IT industry, Mr. Minh?
It's interesting you raise that point, because I think somebody just a few minutes ago commented that on the group chat. So, I think one of the common things that I hear, and call it a stereotype or whatever, is that in general, our colleagues from South Africa and the Philippines, when they interact with our teams, especially with the engineers, there's little feedback, right? And obviously, one thing is for most of these engineers, right, they're the English level, while we do qualify a lot of them, and they do have a strong foundation, they're just very reserved, right? And they don't want to express their mind and their opinion, because they feel that they may sound unintelligent, they may sound unprepared, which is not the case. But I think it's just more of a psychological factor, right, that comes into play, and so they don't want to speak their mind. So what happens is, at the end of the day, that turns into more of it turns less into a two-way feedback conversation. It turns more into one way. Like, it's, okay, I'm telling you what to do because you're not giving me any feedback. And do you understand? Yes or no? And if you don't say anything, if there's no comment, then basically silence means consent and understanding. So you get into this basically psychological trap, in a way that one entity who's stronger in English will then speak down. Like, it's not intentional, but it's just what happens, right? Just the nature of the conversation, and because it's in English. And one entity speaks better than the other, right? So what we've tried to do is, here in Vietnam, you're the experts in technology. You own the technology. You're accountable for the technology, right? And you need to be able to represent it in terms of when you're asked for, when people are seeking advice from you. Yeah. So what we try to do is and it doesn't always work, but we try to make the group smaller with less participants, so that they have to speak, and they're the only one in that room who are accountable for that aspect of the domain. There's no way to get around it, right? Because if you're the only one in the room, and you're the most qualified person to speak on technology, or speak on AWS, or to speak on the platform, either way, you have to talk. There's no way of going around it, right? So make it small. The other thing is, enable them with the skills. Obviously, we offer, and I think most technology companies here these days, like, they offer English training, right? And so it comes with a package. Hopefully, if you can build that relationship between the entities early. So if there's people from South Africa, most of the conversation is online, but at the end of the day, we say, hey, either we have to send you guys over. You spend a lot of time building bridges, building these relationships, and then the conversation becomes easier, right? But again, it also comes back to who you hire and how you qualify, right? Because culturally, you need to qualify to say, hey, you're an engineer, but at the end of the day, one of our core values is actually going and speaking up and being able to represent yourselves, right?
Great. And this is very interesting, because ultimately it is like the communication, and I would like to slightly flip it by saying, like, for example, I'm from Philippines, from your team, and I am talking to my Vietnamese colleague who are expert in IT. They know the technology, they know the product the best, but instead of me just using English as my communication skill as overpowering, how do we train them to actually see that there is a value in getting more closer and giving them time, understand them, how can they speak. So again, it will be both ways, right, Mr. Min? I'm just looking at from their side.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it has to be both ways. It cannot be just like, okay, we are from Vietnam. We have to improve our communication skills. We have to improve our English. Yes, as a country, as a culture, we are doing that. But I think it has to be both ways. Mr. An, coming to the second point, especially on that, if we have to really improve, especially on the multicultural aspect, which links to our productivity and better engagement, how do you think that the technology is going to help us bridge that gap?
So because before I answer this question, I want to go back to your comment about, the Vietnamese engineers need to improve in the communication. So my honest feedback as a Vietnamese person is we are doing service. If you are doing service and you want to get the money from other people, we need to deliver a very good service. And so in that sense, I also agree with Mr. Minh that actually, even in our company, we are making sure that our engineers, they can talk more. Like they in the past, I organized like a tech talk concept where they have to speak like half an hour and then 40 minutes, for example, and then there's a Q&A. And then everyone is so scared of talking to me because they don't want to be invited as the speaker for the tech talk. So in this year, what we do is we build a new concept called lightning speak. And lightning speak is you only speak for 5 minutes. So then they cannot like complain that, oh, I don't know what to talk about and blah, blah, blah. So actually every month, I now have 3 engineers speaking to a group of 20 people, 30 people. And then I believe that in the future, there will be more engineers speaking on stage because knowing how to do one thing is important, but explaining what you do in our tech is also very important. It's like you write a code and you don't comment, and then you expect that 20 months later, someone will go in and then check your code and build something on top of it. So I'm a huge fan of more communication.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I was giving like, yes, we are certainly do our communication, but I think when we are talking about the multicultural, we should also get the other side, also be sensitive about the culture of Vietnam, about how do we get the Vietnamese team to speak up, right? So encourage them. That was the point. Before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to just ask you on what would be your advice to our listeners and audience today, where I'm assuming most of them are our IT professionals. So what would be your advice to this community, especially in respect to working in a multicultural environment? What would be your advice to both IT professionals and also to the support, like the corporate functions of HR, supporting the whole industry? Mr. Min, sorry.
I mean, I think just a general advice for most people, and I think this pertains to tech specifically because I think Vietnam, the growth of the tech sector in the last 20 years, probably 4 or 5-fold at least, right? Easily, right? The growth has been just enormous. And there's never been, to what I've seen, a true recession. Like it's always been on the trajectory of this. It may have flattened a little bit, but it's always on the upside, right? So what I've seen is everyone expects a double-digit salary raise every year. And if they don't get it, there's an opportunity to jump. So what usually happens is if you end up jumping too much, you actually don't get the skill set that you would if you would have stayed and you would have been able to learn a little bit more, grow yourself a little bit more, and be part of something that's just not short term. And so that's kind of not everyone, but a lot of people in tech, I see that as still a mentality today. If I don't get paid tomorrow, you know, there's a new opportunity next door. And because tech is so hot, it's very, very easy for me to get that opportunity. And then at the end of the day, what happens is 10 years, 15 years later, tech changes. What are you going to do? Right. So the foundation needs to be strong. And so I think that being one, I think, you know, be good at your craft and the opportunities will come. I think that's the first tenet. The second one is obviously like when you get older, especially in technology, you know, things change, you know, like people who were doing COBOL 20 years ago, and there's probably still a few jobs there, but that's not the case anymore, right? I mean, you've got to diversify your skill set. And whether that be in management or learning, you know, in terms of communication and being able to lead, that's something that doesn't come natural to people, but that's definitely a way to expand and then continue to grow yourself. And then at the end of the day, that's how you actually, you know, make more money, because it comes along with that, right?
Great.
It's really the long game is actually what I want to say. And for the other folks, I think, you know, it's pretty much the same. I think the only thing that I've seen that has been very unique is basically the growth of, you know, just what's happening in AI and how we're leveraging that in HR, in marketing, in our branding aspect to really get exponentially better, right? Because now people aren't used to, you know, who before were, you know, good at writing English are now like, you know, very good with using ChatGPT, and they're much more efficient. And so we're able to get things out much faster. So I think for those type of industries or segments, you know, I think definitely you need to be on top of what's out there in terms of technology, in terms of AI as well.
Great, thanks. Your inputs, Mr. An.
When it comes to how to work efficiently in multicultural environment, I have 3 classic advice. So number 1 is you need to read books. Not so many people like to read books. I mean, you don't even need to. If the thing is, if you read a book and you don't like the book, just stop reading in the between of the book and then move on to another book. But reading book open lots of horizons to me personally, and also it gives me lots of different perspective on things. So when it comes to multicultural, you don't know what you don't know. So it's very important that if you learn a lot of new things about this work, then eventually you are very flexible and adaptable in any environment. The second advice is you should travel a lot. Like I think my first time when I'm out of the country was when I'm 17 years old to China, and then I was in Singapore, and before I'm 20 years old, I already travel few countries in the region, and I think it's really opened my mind. It's like it shocked me in the beginning how people behave, how people talk, how the building look like, and then eventually it become me as a person. So traveling more frequently if you can. Now traveling is very cheap. Just go with Vietjet, or I don't know, if you have more money, just go with Vietnam Airlines, but travel more often. And finally, I think you should have, and I hope that I don't have any Facebook friends in the conference today, because you should have people in your Facebook who you don't like. Because most of the time we like to hang out and we like to catch up with people with the same opinion like you in life. Me, what I do is, you know, recently there was a monk in Vietnam that gets so, you know, famous, and then eventually the Facebook feed show me all of the people talking about him. So what I do is I choose to follow the people that like him and the people that also doesn't like him. I mean, I cannot tell you my own personal opinion because it's dangerous in public, but I follow everyone. because I believe that when people give you a different perspective in life, you can learn a lot. Yeah, I guess 70% of people in my Facebook friend list, I don't really like them or want to have a beer with them, but they are in my network.
Wow, that's an interesting insight, and all the three are really relevant. Thank you so much, Mr. Minh and Mr. An. Let's move on to the question and answer now. Let me just start with the first question, which is on the screen. I don't need to read, but actually it is about if you are a CEO of a company which has just you are part of that one branch which is in Vietnam. It's a global company, and the policies of the corporation, you have to abide by it, which are like sometimes like the leave policy, which are not very suitable, and because of the holidays are different, and you are servicing a client, say for example, Mr. An, you are servicing, your team is servicing to someone in say Egypt or somebody in the other market, but you have Tet holidays here. How do you do about it?
So I want to confirm, public holiday is legal. So my answer to the group is, I'm sorry, this is legal. And if you want the people to work during that holidays, usually they will have 3x salary. They have to pay 3 times the salary. And I'm pretty sure my team will be like, yay, please, please. I don't need to go home with my mom, you know. And that's an issue because when to work with engineers, most of the time I have to kick their ass home. They like to just code and debug and whatever, create new bugs or and stay in the office. So that's my answer, official answer.
Thank you. I love that, create new bugs. That's interesting. Moving on to the next question. We have, thank you, audience, and thank you, listeners. I think we have many questions. We will try to address as much as possible. There is another question on the screen. These are the questions which we received actually before the session. We have live questions as well. So we are just taking the questions which we received beforehand. So if you are managing a work like 2 to 3 teams, sometimes remotely or hybrid in different countries, how do you make sure that you measure their performance and productivity effectively? Mr. Minh.
I mean, good question. I think really just depends on the type of work too. Like, so for example, if I'm working with a designer who's doing branding or logo, and his or her deliverable is basically giving me that output that I would want in a certain amount of time, that's very quantifiable. That's easy, right? Again, engineering to some degree, that's relatively straightforward, especially if you're a smaller teams. I think where it gets a bit more gray is when there's a lot of dependency on people, right? And so the more dependencies you have, the more interactions you need, the more conversations you need in between. That's when it's better to have face-to-face conversations, or at least minimum hybrid, so that you can at least get in and converse and make sure that you can see eye to eye on things. But if it's just solo for small teams, where now today we have plenty of engagement tools, Zoom, so on and so we're doing a webinar now, right? So that, but I think also it's, if you're doing full remote, right, and you have the budget, I think at minimum you should spend at least once a quarter to do a meetup of some sort, right? If it's close enough, right? Obviously, but you cannot overvalue the the face-to-face interaction, right? It's quite important.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think what you mentioned about the at least once to face, because it also helps to build the empathy part, right? Really understanding and all that. So that's really helpful. Moving on to the next question. We have another question. So Mr. An, how to get Vietnamese software developer talk more at the meeting with colleagues from India, Asia, and Philippines? I think we covered this, but I did ask to Mr. Minh, but I would like to listen from you.
I think Mr. Minh covered like 90% of what needed already. Honestly, one thing you should know, from my own personal experiences working with engineers from India, Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnamese, engineers, they talk a lot, right? So it's not an issue that they talk. It's the issue because most of the time, again, it's because of the English and the language barrier and the communication style that they cannot talk with each other. So my recommendation is you have a host or like a facilitator of the discussion, and where you point at the Vietnamese engineer, you say, now you speak, and they will speak. I use it many times in the past, and it's very useful.
Very interesting, and I can certainly vouch for it because in Ipsos, in my team, I have a person from IT background, and he is gem when it comes to working on developing app, and he's super. But when it comes to communicating, I need somebody who can help him understand what I really expect from him. So yeah, you're right. If you have someone, that can be a good idea. Okay, so let's move on to the live questions. Thanks, audience. Thanks, our listeners, for asking these questions. So let me go one by one. So the first question is, what is your opinion on the view that in a multicultural environment, in certain circumstances, stereotypes about colleagues, bosses from other countries can be a motivation for an employee to work more effectively and productively? For example, when working with German colleagues, I will automatically pay more attention to details and always be on time for meetings. So what we discussed was stereotyping is not good. But now the audience is saying that actually it could be also taken as an advantage by, if I know that, oh, this is a person coming from Germany, then I know that I have to be on time. What's your take on that, Mr. Minh?
Now, I mean, I'll go back to my Japanese roots, right? So, I mean, I think prior to Time, and then before that I was a US based startup, and then prior to that I was with a Japanese company, right? So, it's funny to see the type of people who apply for Japanese companies versus Western companies. They're almost a different demographic, even though they're engineers. And so you see the tendency for people who apply and usually stay long at Japanese companies is they gravitate to the culture. Right. They gravitate to the strictness, to the disciplineness and the attention to detail, right? Whereas engineers who apply from Western companies usually they're more fast paced. They want to learn a lot. They want to do a lot of things, and they want to do it quickly and try to grow their skill set as quickly as possible. From kind of companies to companies, right? Because the opportunities are more abundant because there's more of those type of companies. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that statement. I think some of the people, especially the ones who stay long in Japanese companies, just really appreciate that.
Right. Thank you. Moving on to the next question. What strategies do you think are suitable to implement to promote knowledge sharing and cross-cultural learning more actively within our teams? Because in my team, some Vietnamese members are usually quiet in discussions. I think it is very much what we discussed before, but yeah, Mr. An, if you would like to add.
I think we covered that question already. Yeah.
We already covered it. Let's move on to the next one. Mr. An, for you. Employees working in a multicultural company do not have cultural differences, but also differences in work thinking, working methods. So very personal, individual versus multicultural. Differences in methods, etc. So if the company only evaluates the capacity of employees using the performance scale on the home-based country, for instance, Vietnam, is it going to be fair for everyone?
Wow, fairness is a very big topic.
Yeah.
and fairness is honestly, because fairness is also one of our company core values. So we have so many discussion about it. So fairness can be very subjective as well. So like my definition of fairness sometimes cannot be your definition of fairness because of our differences. So in this circumstance, I assume that the person who asking this question is talking about, hey, you know, you pay me less than the guy in Germany or a guy from America, and why you expect me to deliver the same values? And we have an answer for this. So in NFQ, we hire only the top people in the market. I'm pretty sure everyone would say the same, because right now tech is very competitive and you need the best guys in your team. So when you hire the best guy in the team, he has a lot of choices. So he can join our company, he can go to other company in Vietnam, he can go and work freelancer for US. So all of the options will have the pros and cons. So when you choose a company, you are not only choosing the salary that the company offer, you're choosing the opportunities to learn something that in 2 years you can ask for 2-digit salary somewhere else. You are also choosing the lifestyle that the company can offer. I have a friend who is working freelancer for US startups, and then he's almost turned crazy after 2 years. Because you imagine you wake up at 4 p.m. and then you work until I don't know when, 7 a.m. or at 8 a.m. or something, and then you go to sleep where everybody else in the city wake up. So he has no girlfriend, and he has no personal life. So if you like something like that, then good luck. But if you move to US or you move to Europe and you stay and you work, then first of all, the tax is unbelievable high, right? And second of all is the living standard is also very high. It cost me this bottle of water in Vietnam like less than $1, for example. If you go to Switzerland, it's gonna cost you 10 euros. So imagine that. So I think that now, like I said, the work is getting very flat, and the competition is very global. So I think you should not expect that the level of the expectation from other people will get less, but you should, grow yourself to be really up to the global level.
Right. Thank you. Very interesting. There is another question about the training, and I'll ask this to Mr. Minh. What are global trainings or best practices to train foreign experts to understand more about Vietnamese IT communication and the culture? So would you recommend anything, any global training or anything which you're aware of?
Global training, I'm not really sure to training available for Vietnamese culture, I think.
Which can, like, for example, I'm an expat who's coming out the first time in Vietnam. What I should be really going through is there any website or any training which can help?
I mean, I think to be honest, I'm one of those guys who just likes to get my feet wet. And so, like for anybody who wants experience, I think the best thing to do is just to go work for the company and then work with engineers, right? And I think that's where you actually learn the most. I mean, I've never, at least personally for me, coming, from Japan and obviously the US coming over here, I started immediately working with people, and that's how I
as you get into the new culture, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the 3 points which Mr. An did mention was travel. So my suggestion would be to travel into that country where you are planning to go for. So that could be one. I take that advice from Mr. An. Mr. An, you were raising your hand. You wanted to share something on this point?
No, I just want to say exactly what you just said, right? If you want to learn about the culture, just be here. It's for our client, it's actually my recommendation. If they work with us every 6 months, they have to be here at least for a week or 2.
All right, interesting. And this question is specifically to you, Mr. An, and I think it is coming from something which you mentioned about how you get your engineers speak up. So The question is, hello, hello, Anne. I like your sharing about lighting speech. I have a question, which is about, as each engineer has 5 minutes, how do you make their sharing valuable to the listeners?
So when I first started writing, because part of my job is like, if I ask my team to talk more, I also need to talk more. And believe it or not, I'm very introvert, right? So it's really painful for me when I first start writing things and speaking, because first of all, it's not something that I was born with. So I struggle to write only like 100 pages, 100 words. And then, or I speak like 5 minutes, and then later on I can speak like 20 minutes, and up to a certain time where I was the facilitator for a panel in front of 5,000 people. And it took me, I think, 5 or 6 years. So the lightning speech, first of all, is the interaction practice, so that the people feel comfortable to be on stage, get the stage fright, and then talk to the people. And for the rest of the audience, you get to ask him the questions. And then the Q&A is actually the most valuable part of the lightning speech, not the sharing itself. The sharing is only a way to start a conversation, and then they can start talking to each other. So to answer the question, honestly, the sharing itself is not very, very valuable, but the conversation, the communication, and the time, yes, is what it counts.
Excellent. Interesting. And thank you so much for explaining that, because I feel it is not just about, you are giving a platform where people can just come fearlessly, not being judged, just speak up. Right. I think that will just help them to come out of that fear of speaking. So thank you very much, Mr. An and Mr. Minh. So before we wrap up this whole session, I would like to ask from you, what would be your parting message or remark for our IT professionals and people who are supporting the industry, Mr. Minh?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you for having me. I hope that, our sharing, Anna and myself, was helpful and resonated with some of you folks. Yeah, I think, end of the day, my closing thoughts is really what I mentioned earlier. It's whatever you do, whatever career path you go down, it's a journey. So, obviously, to have a career is part of, providing food, on the table for either for yourself or your family. So, that's quite important. But I think at the end of the day, it is a journey. Have fun, try to learn as much as possible. And if you do that and you keep that in mind, at the end of the day, the money and everything else will come, right? But, just be just be good at your craft and try to excel in that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Minh. Mr. An.
Yeah, so I want to say again, the 3 things I recommend everyone, you should read more books, you should travel more, and you should add Facebook friend with people you don't like. And that is how you will, extend your horizon and have a very good career. Thanks, everyone.
I'm taking that advice personally very seriously. I'll implement it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our audience, listeners, and thank you so much. I'm really, I would say, honored to really interact with people like Mr. An and Mr. Minh. Very inspirational. I think it is. I got really inspired by looking at both your stories. Right, when it comes to Mr. An, he struggled through, made his own path, and whatever status he has now. And again, Mr. Minh, coming from a background which is, he grew up in, though he's Vietnamese, but he grew up in US, looked at all that, worked different places, and then came back and now leading the big company. So thank you very much. I'm really, really honored to be your host today. And just for my wrap up, I think this is the country. It's a time where everybody is looking at Vietnam, and especially IT industry. At Ipsos, we are also at Ipsos. I forgot to actually introduce myself. At Ipsos, we are actually we are a marketing and research company, consulting company. We help our clients understand about customers, people, market, and society. And now some of my management, some people from my management, my highest senior management, is asking me to see if we can really look at creating a hub for IT hub to support our global team. So that's what I wanted to share, that this is an opportunity. This is the country which has a lot of opportunity, and we have such a talented pool of engineers, IT professionals, and it's just about some training, some upgrading our own skills to be the best in the world. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it on to Ms. Than to conclude. Thank you.
Wow, thank you guys. And to be honest, as the organizer, it's my great honor to learn directly from the speakers and the host today. And I believe that we have a fantastic sessions. And of course, a huge thank for your time, for your preparation, contribution. And we hope that all the audience today can have the great tips and takeaways, also very fresh perspectives on how diversity can truly elevate our IT teams. And hopefully that in the very near future that we have the opportunity to meet, maybe we might be able to meet in person in the upcoming activities of ITviec. And thank you. And very looking forward to many thought-provocative and deep sharings in the IT industry in the future. And together we can excite the IT in Vietnam. So thanks again for tuning in, and have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.